Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
7:37 here on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson.
Who apparently, according to some, is a moron. I'm a moron.
Well,
that's what I've been told.
Just one at the moment.
Come on.
And it's not me. It's not me.
No, look, I haven't done my job if somebody doesn't think I'm a moron.
That's true. Just wait till you get home later today. KT McFarland joins us now, Fox News national security analyst. So, we've been talking for weeks on end about this debt crisis and whether or not there's going to be a deal or not. And I was just going to get your take on this because there seems to be a lot of people and Republicans now coming on board. I know Tom Coburn, as part of his plan, was to cut $1 trillion from the Defense Department over 10 years. We had just Ron Paul on the other day, or last hour, and he essentially said it's time to cut defense spending as well. How much can be cut from the Defense Department, and how easy will that be for the DoD?
Well, I think that before you answer that question, you have to answer a question earlier, which is, what do you want your Defense Department to do? What are your missions? What are your goals? What do you think it could achieve, and at what risk are you willing to run to achieve those things? And then the second, so that needs to be question number one. You're trying to fight big wars with China. Are you trying to fight little wars in the Middle East? Mm-hmm. Because that determines what kind of force you would create. And then once you've determined that, then you've got to figure out, okay, are we getting the most effective military force bang for our buck? I mean, we're now to the point where every single weapon system we have is so outrageously expensive.
Right.
That we have very little bang for big bucks. And then the second question is not one of equipment, but it's one of personnel. The personnel costs of the military, and it's not just the military, it's largely the massive growth of civilians in the Defense Department is what's eating bigger and bigger pieces of that budget. And so I don't think it's a matter of saying, okay, we cut a little bit here, can we cut a little bit there? Tell me what missions you want to cut, and then we can cut the Defense Department budget, and then tell me how we're going to substitute, get away from having a lot of people and having fewer people, so can you use equipment technology to substitute for people who are expensive? And then why do you need such hugely expensive machinery if you're going to try to use it in the deserts of the Middle East?
Yeah, but the problem is the missions change. I mean, I don't think a lot of people thought we were going to be in a war in Iraq before 2001.
Right.
And so, I mean, who makes those decisions on what the missions are going to be?
Here's the problem, Brian. When we have a weapon system, it takes 20 years to put a weapon system from the concept of it to actually having it deployed and in the field. We couldn't do that in World War II. You did something, you had the concept, and it was in the field within a couple of years. And so I think we've got to go back and look at our whole procurement process. Mm-hmm. There's just too many people. The thing about bureaucracies is the bigger and bigger they get, then the more committees they have, and then the more people who have to approve and sign off on stuff. And it ends up being, frankly, it ends up being like our arteries, right? They're so clogged, you just don't get anything done, and then ultimately the machine dies.
All right. Hey, listen, I got to ask you about this FBI arrest yesterday of a Pakistani. He's a U.S. citizen, but he's of Pakistani nationality. Apparently, he was caught by the FBI, one hears, submitting annual strategy reports and budgetary requirements to his Pakistani government handlers so that he could continue to secure U.S. congressional support to encourage the executive branch to support self-determination in Kashmir. Something to the tune of $500,000 to $700,000. These were going to politicians. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, it was probably our money that went to Pakistan that then got funneled through to Pakistani intelligence services that came back to bribe our congressmen. Now, what's wrong with all that? Two things. Our whole contribution and political system, where it's so awash and flush with money, you don't know where the money's coming from. And secondly, what is the U.S. relationship with Pakistan? We keep giving them a lot of money. What are we getting for it? I think very little.
And in fairness, the FBI did say there's no indication that those who received contributions knew that they came from the Pakistani government. But you make a good point. This money is probably just coming full circle from our treasury back to our congressmen.
Yeah, but somebody's getting, there are going to be a lot of nicks off of that and percentages taken at every step of the way.
It's just a money feedback loop.
Your money feedback
loop.
Exactly.
KT, I wanted to ask you about General Petraeus is moving officially from Afghanistan over to the CIA this week. attacks in Afghanistan, insurgent attacks, have been down in May and June compared with 2010, but of course a lot of those soldiers who are supposed to be trained, to the Afghan soldiers who are supposed to be trained, we've not met those levels. What does the move for Petraeus mean for Afghanistan and maybe for the CIA's involvement there?
Well, I think that the move, when I was in Afghanistan a couple of months ago, I sat down with General Petraeus and had long talks about the whole sort of future of war. We're not going to fight big land wars anywhere in the Middle East, certainly. What are we going to do? We're going to have more covert actions. And so the future of the U.S. sort of national security world, as it were, is not going to be big land armies. It's going to be small covert units that are going to go and do one action and then another action. They're not going to be positioned overseas in big bulks to conduct big land wars. And then the second thing is intelligence. We have now seen, whether it was with the bin Laden raid, where we had very good intelligence, or the Arab Spring, where we had very bad intelligence, that intelligence gathering is going to be a crucial ingredient of anything going forward. And I think that the move of Petraeus going to the intelligence community on both of those scores is a good thing.
All right, Nidal Hassan has an arraignment today.
Right.
His first courtroom appearance in quite some time. And they're going to go after the death penalty for him, right?
I hope.
Yeah. So I guess this one kind of lets the administration off because, he was in uniform when he did it, and he did it on a military base.
And he's an American citizen.
Yeah. So this is a pretty open and shut case for where to try him and what to do with him, right?
Yeah, but yes, I think for him in this particular instance, because of the three things that you've mentioned, it makes sense to do it the way they're doing it. But it calls into question the bigger issue of what do we do with detainees? What do we do with guys who aren't in the U.S. military, who aren't U.S. citizens, who didn't commit a crime on a military base? What do you do with them? We don't put them in Gitmo, right? We've already decided that.
Right.
There are real problems with putting them into the U.S. court system, as we have seen in New York. But what do? You don't want to give them to other countries. We don't want to have rendition where we give them to other countries, and who knows what happens to them then. And so what's tending to happen more and more is people who are caught on the battlefield are getting killed. It's having the reverse effect. Our military doesn't know what to do with them. So instead of taking them into custody, trying them in the U.S. Military tribunals, which were set up specifically to do that, and thereby getting a lot of intelligence out of them.
Right.
We're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face. I mean, to me, any terrorist suspect, there's sort of two tracks to what we need from him. One, you need to prosecute him, and you can do that in military tribunals. But secondly, what does he know that we need to know? And if you put him in the U.S. court system, you'll never know.
All right, KT. Great to talk to you as always. We appreciate your time.